Hi guys, this is Mr. Tan, and today we're looking at business strategy. So we've reviewed different strategies. We've reviewed alternative strategies in terms of retractment and disinvestment. And now we're going to be looking at understanding organizational purposes of the business, and to kind of look in terms of how you implement these and the importance of communication within the implementation of any strategy within an organization. So we're going to look at the communication and the combination of the teamwork involved in this in terms of the organizational structure and so on and so forth. So we're going to assess the roles and responsibilities of personnel who are charged with the strategy and implementation, which is going to involve obviously a great deal of communication to get this done. So the realization of strategic plans, that's what we're looking at. So communication is one of the keys to successful strategy implementation, and it needs to happen throughout the whole organization, and it can't just happen in one or two departments, or even between one or two departments. It needs to be wider, more holistic, and communication needs to be going on all the time in order to have effective implementation. So when we have decided on the correct strategy, we must ensure that it is implemented properly and in the most efficient and effective way. So communication is a crucial element for success. So what is communication? Communication is the act of transferring information through verbal messages, the written word, or more subtle non-verbal signals. Communication is imparting or exchange of information by speaking, writing, or using other mediums, including radio, television, and so on and so forth. And we've all looked at the communication model before in terms of the sender, and then how the sender encodes the message, and then the channel, and then the decoder, and then the receiver of the message. So there are different categories of communication, and these include spoken or verbal communication, face-to-face, telephone, radio, television, and other media. Non-verbal communication, body language, gestures, how we dress or act, even our scent. Written communication, letters, emails, books, magazines, internet, or via social media. Visualization, in terms of graphs, charts, maps, logos, and other visualizations, can communicate various messages. So let's look at two types of communication. So in terms of the business, we're looking at the internal communications, which happens within the business itself, and then external communications that take place between the business and the outside individuals or organizations. Internal communication, well, this is particularly important. It links all the different activities involved in a business. It also aims to ensure that all employees are working towards the same goal and know exactly what they should be doing and by when. Because if you're going to achieve your aims and objectives, then you're going to need different departments and all departments to be working together to achieve that same aim. If you are in marketing, then you might need a budget from finance, so you might need to make sure that the cash flow is there. And if you are doing a marketing campaign, then that's going to obviously increase sales ideally, and if it's going to increase sales, that's going to have an effect on production and warehouse and all the different managed and different sections that are there to increase that production to get to the levels that you need to get to for your marketing campaign. So again, everything affects everything else. The sales directors would be involved, the agents or the sales reps would be involved in the planning of this campaign, so everyone would know what was happening. Administration will need to know exactly what was happening in terms of the marketing campaign, when it was happening, and what the expected outcome was, and so on and so forth. So internal communication is very important in order to make any plan come to fruition. And you always have business to customers communication. So external communication, this is where the business communicates with people and organizations outside the business. This is closely linked to the idea of stakeholders. So, those who have an interest in the activities and results of the business. So, external communications. When Tesco's was, building their Tesco's, store in Streatham, before they could get, approval, they would have to meet and talk to the, stakeholders in terms of the councils, in terms of the community, in terms of what they were going to build. And Tesco's in Streatham built a ice ring. They built a a bus depot. They built affordable housing on top of their store. And again, this was all linked to meeting the needs of the stakeholders. So external communication in terms of getting the stakeholders on board in that community so they could build their store was absolutely important to achieving their objective in terms of their distribution in one of their stores and increasing the distribution network in terms of greater market penetration in the UK. And you also have external communication in terms of business to business to let the other businesses know exactly what's happening. You have other communication in terms of social media, such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, Tumblr, Instagram, and so on and so forth. So you have a wide variety of other social media platforms to be able to communicate your message, either to both internal and external. So, what would be considered good or effective communication? This would be, with regards to communication, which included the following. The sender and receiver of information are properly matched. The message is communicated clearly without misunderstanding or misinterpretation. Communication is made using an appropriate communication channel or method. And the receiver of the communication is able to pass on any relevant and appropriate feedback. So the communication is two-way, can't be just one-way communication. You also have informal communication. These are unofficial messages, not formally approved by the business. Everyday conversations or gossip between staff. You have formal communication. Formal communications are official messages sent by an organization, like a company memo, fax, or report. The delegation of authority, accountability, coordination. So, can we compare the roles and responsibilities of, for strategy implementation? So when we're thinking about strategy implementation, it's going to be absolutely crucial in order to get this done effectively and efficiently and productively, so you're not wasting money. You need effective communication and all the different types and sorts of communication that you need. So when implementing a strategy, we need to consider the various things. We need to consider resources that need to be deployed on two levels in terms of corporate, between different businesses, and even unit or operations between functions and departments. At operational level, a sudden cutback or delay in investment will make resource allocation a strategic issue. Implementation problems, you can have time delays, unexpected problems arise, implementation activities dominate, so other aspects of the organization suffer. Some employees may not have the skills to implement the strategy. Implementation tasks are not defined properly as they should do. Overall goals are not communicated, so people are not empowered, people are not working together to, the overall aims and objectives or goals that they're trying to achieve. So, guide for good implementation, envisaging the organization vision needs to be communicated at different levels. Activating, ensure all stakeholders support the strategy. Supporting, leaders need to recognize the problems that staff face. Installing, develop detailed plans to implement and control the strategy. Controlling, to ensure the work is being done. Work is of a particular quality, work done on time, and so on and so forth, and recognizing who has contributed to the success of the organization. Implementation, when implementing a strategy, plans need to include, documenting the responsibilities, preparing responsibility charts, and, preparing activity schedules. When we look at the management of objectives, plans, controls, and coordinates short and long-term plans, including incorporating manager objectives with the organization's objectives. So this all needs to be incorporated together. In order to achieve the overall organizational goals, there needs to be direction, a target, performance measurement. And each manager must know in different departments exactly what's happening. So we also have the hierarchy of objectives. Hierarchy of objectives in terms of the strategic plan, the long term. Okay. And then you have the tactical plans, short term. Unit or departmental plans. You have individual managers' objectives, and and what we need to remember is that all objectives are required by all departments. They need to know exactly what their aims and objectives are, and these aims and objectives need to fit into the overall aims and objectives and the mission and vision of the company. So if we go into a little more detail into the unit objectives explained, they must be set by primary targets. Secondary targets are to be set. You need to identify which individual managers can influence which targets. Management will set a unit improvement plan. The unit improvement plan includes key results and performance standards. A job improvement plan is agreed with each individual member of staff, and there needs to be a systematic performance review of managers' results. So again, each manager's objectives within their department, and what exactly do you need to achieve over what period of time, and then at the end of that period, have you achieved it? I know when I worked for my first company, Metro Products, I was the marketing manager, and as we grew, my department grew, and eventually I had 10 people working for me. I had a budget of £1 million, and so I had to manage that. One of the objectives of the marketing department was to ensure that we had X percentage increase of sales on specific product lines from year to year. So that was very specific, and the marketing activities had to be directed and resources had to be directed towards achieving those goals. There were other objectives of the department in terms of making sure that we worked within budget, and a variety of other objectives as well. There was only about 5 key objectives, but those 5 key objectives had to be reviewed at different parts at each quarter, and there were monthly management reports as well to find out if we were on track and what was actually happening. So again, these were all reviewed and discussed on a regular basis and a continuous basis. And it's important so everyone knows exactly where they're going and where they are, and if there are any problems arising, and so on and so forth. Because if there are, then it needs to be discussed straight away, because a problem in one area is going to affect a problem in another area. Delegation of authority. A manager alone cannot perform all the tasks assigned to him. In order to meet the targets, the manager should delegate authority. A manager's role is to manage. A manager's role is to plan, organize, direct, and control. A manager is not just to get down and do everything himself, but it's to delegate it to his staff. Delegation of authority means division of authority and powers downwards to the subordinate, the employee. Delegating, is about entrusting someone else to do parts of your job. And delegation of authority can be defined as, subdivision and suballocation of powers to the subordinates in order to achieve effective results. So here we can see a chart here in terms of delegation of authority, where you have the board of directors, and then managing director, general manager, and then down below you've got on the same level kind of like marketing manager, production manager, and the finance manager, and below the production manager you have the works manager, foreman, supervisor and workmen. So line organizational structure and delegation of authority. So accountability. So uh, so accountability, back up the line of command implies communication from subordinate to superior, accounting for the use of delegated authority, and reporting results, as well as appealing to the supervisor with problems or decisions which are not within the area of subordinate's delegated authority, and so on. Accountability, so we look at accountability here, and the accountability is going back up in terms of back up the line. And then we have coordination. This links individuals, teams and departments in cooperative systems of working. This involves sharing information across different units to create synergy, and this is so important in terms of coordination, because if different departments are out of sync, and you're planning, for instance, in marketing to do a marketing campaign, but then the finance department doesn't have the cash flow within the organization to carry that, and you've already spoken to production to increase production levels, well, then there's not a great synergy, because you're not going to be able to carry out your campaign unless you have the funds and resources there to do it. So there needs to be communication as regards to what's happening where, what resources are needed when and where, by whom, so that you can carry out all your objectives, meeting the overall company's objectives. But if one department is falling down, well, and they have problems, and that department needs to communicate with the other departments to let everyone else know exactly what's happening, so that people can adjust their plans. So synergy, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, sometimes expressed as 2 + 2 = 5. For example, 2 or more employees who excel together but are ordinary when working alone, are said to have synergy. Coordination, again, if we look at the same model with coordination, the coordination here is going horizontal across the different departments. So we're gaining coordination and synergy with effective communication. Types of communication. We have vertical communication. Messages are sent between staff along the different levels of the organization hierarchy. Delegation of authority or accountability. And horizontal communications are messages sent between staff at the same level of the organization hierarchy. Very important to have both forms of communication, vertical and horizontal. So forming a team now, because we've looked at the importance of communication. We've looked at the importance of implementation with the use of effective communication, but ultimately it's going to be teams of people who work together to achieve these objectives. So we'll be looking at Bellbine's team formation. Again, forming a team, selecting a team and team roles and its effects together, everything achieves more. And having the right people at the right time with the right skills to do the right job at the right price is absolutely crucial to getting and meeting your objectives. So what is a team? A team is not just a bunch of people with job titles, but a congregation of individuals, each of whom has a role which is understood by the other members. Members of a team seek out certain roles, and they perform most effectively in the ones that are most natural to them. Okay. So this is Bellbine's theory of team formation. What is it used for? This is used to identify people's behavioral strengths and weaknesses in the workplace. And Bellbine was saying that his information can be used to build productive working relationships, to select and develop high-performing teams, to raise self-awareness and personal effectiveness, to build mutual trust and understanding, and to aid in the recruitment process. So selecting team members will be dependent upon specialist skills and knowledge, what is required for the task for each project, the experience of individuals, useful for problem solving. Political power, who you know. Access to resources such as equipment or information. And competence, the ability to do the job in hand. Team roles for Bellbine. So Bellbine suggested various team roles. The coordinator, the shaper, the plant, the monitor evaluator, the resource investigator, the implementer, the team worker, the finisher. And then, we said Bellbine was suggesting there were various stages in team formation, and when people actually get together, then they go through a process in terms of forming the team, storming the team, where now people may be jostling for power, and then people are trying to position themselves for different roles within that team, and then norming. Now the team starts to get used to each other and used to the personalities within that team, and they start to now norm to the accepted ways of working in that team. And then performing, now the team starts working and starts performing in terms of achieving and meeting their objectives. And adjourning is when the project is finished and now the team separates and goes back to their individual departments. So team stages, explanation: forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning, which we just explained. Forming, team members are introduced. Storming, transitions, as is to be, norming, consensus to be, the process within that team. Performing, now starts working towards and meeting their objectives, hopefully. And adjourning, again, shares the improved process with others, and the team has now finished and met their objectives. We also need to think about team building. Team building involves giving a group of people a greater sense of their identity as a team. The team spirit, encouraging group loyalty or solidarity so that members put an extra effort for the sake of the group, and encouraging the group to commit themselves to shared work objectives and to cooperate willingly to achieve them. Project teams. Here, employees join a project team, which gives them exposure to other parts of the business and allows them to take part in new activities. Most successful project teams are multidisciplinary. Advantage of these, generally most cost effective. Employees are, actually productive, and opportunity to learn whilst doing, and training along real colleagues. Some of the disadvantages include quality dependent on ability of trainer and time available. Bad habits might be passed on. Learning environment may not be conductive, and potential disruption to production as well. Organizational charts. Here's an example of accountabilities for CEO, and marketing director. Resource allocation of the firms were very, very important. Again, you've got labour, capital and land, and this is something in terms of strategy that needs to be determined, where the resources are going to be allocated depending upon your overall strategy, and what and how you want to achieve that strategy with effective communication, with the implementation of teams of people, and what people you actually need to implement the strategy. So resource allocation, you need to think about money, time, deadlines, information, scheduling, costing, and flexibility. So project management, again, 4 main or crucial considerations or activities includes information, includes scheduling, costing, and flexibility. So when it comes to project management as well, additional things that you need to think about are the organizational culture. What is the way that you normally conduct your projects? How do you actually do it? Is it standard project approaches, or do you have sprints and finishes in terms of your projects? So again, something else to think about in terms of how you conduct the work within the teams taking into consideration also the organizational culture of your company. So I hope that has helped today, but very, very important, because we've talked about strategy so much and the different types of strategy. We looked at the situation analysis. Now we're talking about communication of the marketing strategy, and we're talking about implementation using effective communication, and then moving on to teams of people and how you need the right team of people to achieve your overall objectives. So thank you today from Mr. Tan.